I listen to my soul rather than my intellect, which I'm still learning how to do.
Remember how little you know. You're just a curious monkey after all.
Hello my friends and welcome back to the show. Finally we're here after a long pause. This year I've been very busy working in different projects, films, moving around, and the good news is that I'm back and that I'm in the middle of an amazing project, probably the biggest of my life, something that is going to involve this channel and something that is going to involve films, and you're going to know about it very soon. But today we're having another episode of this podcast with my friend Bryce Goertzen. And I met Bryce very recently, a few days ago, in a retreat that some friends were putting together in the Sacred Valley and I was helping with. And it was an amazing time where we practiced martial arts and plant medicines, and we had dream circles and brain mapping and Wachuma hikes, going to the mountains and drinking San Pedro all together. It was incredible. It was very important for me what I received and what I learned there. And Bryce was a big part of this because he was the shaman. So the first day when I got there and I got to the ceremony and I saw him, I was impressed because he's very young and he's from Canada, and I'm used to have maestros that are shipibo, that are old, so I was saying, okay, this is going to be interesting. I was looking forward to see what was going to happen. So the lights went off and suddenly he started to sing. And the power of the Icarus, the quality of the Icarus, it was mind-blowing. And I can say that being in a lot of ceremonies and that this was something truly special. You can feel the integrity, you can feel his theater, you can feel his humility. Not only how he sings, how he relates with people, how he cares. His jokes after. He was with us all the time in many different ways. So that's something that I really appreciate, and that was something very special. So I was very happy when he accepted to do this interview. He was very open. And this is very interesting because it's the mix of two worlds. It's a guy from Canada, Western, going to the Amazon and going through the process of a friendship with respect to the plants, and you could see how much he got from it. And this was a guy that was playing metal music before becoming a shaman, and the thing that shows in his musicality and his ceremonies. And he was very open about everything. He was very open about how he received the call, how the training was, the importance of a maestro. He trained under the tutelage of a Shipibo shaman called Wheeler. That, funny enough, was the first shaman I ever drank ayahuasca with many years ago while I was doing the filming of Reconnect, a documentary for London Real. So that was a funny coincidence. There's a lot of funny coincidences. So yeah, stay tuned because this is a special interview. He even spoke a little bit about an interesting plant and a dieta that he did of 5 months dieting Toe. That Toe is a very dangerous plant. It's a deliriant. It makes you have hallucinations without knowing that you're having hallucinations, and it can last for days. There is a lot of horrible bad trips in internet, so don't do this at home. It's very dangerous and you can die, so it's not a joke. But he did it with the supervision of a maestro, and he went through this process of learning from this plant for 5 months. And this is a very special document and testimony, so stay tuned because it's very funny. He speaks about talking with invisible people and also to getting lost in his own bathroom. So yeah, I'm very glad this happened. I can't wait to go to diet with him one-to-one in a small retreat that he has in Tarapoto that you can check here. And for now, I'm just going to leave you with Bryce and his stories of the jungle. Thank you so much, Bryce, for being here in this podcast. So first question I always ask to the people, imagine that you are in a party and you met somebody that doesn't know anything about medicines, doesn't know anything about what you do in the jungle, and he asks you, what do you do for a living? And you want to explain it to these people, what do you do for a living?
I would usually say curanderismo, and I would kind of gauge whether they'd be interested in it or not, chances are they would ask, what is that? Because, I mean, the parties that I go to, I don't really do parties so much anymore, like with the alcohol and stuff. I get together with friends every now and then, but over here it's kind of like common knowledge. But if somebody didn't know anything about the medicine, I would just explain it's working with ayahuasca and plant medicines, basically, just simply put.
And how did you start to be interested in ayahuasca and plant medicines?
I first heard about it in 2010 from a bunch of media I was taking in, from podcasts, and like books that I was reading would just sort of casually mention it. So I first heard about it around 2010 when I was just, I was 20 years old, just trying to figure out things after school. But then the subject just kept coming up. And then I started doing a little bit more research on it. And the notion behind that there's like a Gaian mother spirit behind a plant that can kind of connect you with the natural world and connect you with your own spirit. I kind of came from a Catholic background and then was kind of agnostic for a little bit. And but that sort of struck a chord with me. And so I just started looking a little bit more into it. Okay, it's this brew from the Amazon that brings people visionary experiences. There's a purging element to it. There's like an energetic healing element to it. And it was just really fascinating. So I kind of, after I'd broken up with my then girlfriend, it was a 5-year relationship, and I was kind of looking to put myself back together as I was figuring out who I was and what I wanted to do. I saw that as the perfect opportunity to go down to the jungle for the first time. And I selected Pulse Tours in Iquitos that was run by Dan Cleland, who now owns Soltara, and had an amazing experience beyond what I can still put in words. It really cracked me open, and it also taught me a lot. In the 2 weeks that I was there, I felt like I learned more than I ever had in all of my high school education, for sure, in just those 2 weeks. So after that, I went back home and I started to integrate some of the things and sharing with people about what had gone on. And they were, mixed reactions. Some people were like, oh, that's very cool. And other people were like, yeah, you're just tripping balls in the Amazon, right? It's like, okay. But then I wanted to go back down and do like a process with a dieta, because after that, and just being exposed to shamanism full frontal, and then I got completely obsessed with it. Started going to the library, getting all the books that talked about Siberian shamanism, Germanic shamanism, and like the practices that are kind of like all over the world. And it was just like a new obsession. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and so I was practicing the lucid dreaming and little things that you could do. I got a drum and was practicing like some of the shamanic journeying that way. Every now and then taking like a big dose of mushrooms, just like by myself in the dark and that kind of thing. But then, I went back down.
Before all of that, were you interested in shamanism and psychedelics? And
I didn't really know anything about it. No, not until then. It was just when I felt like I needed some help, some uplifting energy in my life, because I was kind of feeling a little bit stagnant, a little bit lost, and a little bit just kind of bereft, and like, what is this experience all about? And that's where I found a lot of help with ayahuasca.
So you come back and you feel this call to go deeper into and then lead you to your first dieta.
See, yeah.
And how long after was that?
That was probably about 1.5 years, something like that. Yeah. I can't remember the time frame exactly. It was 2017 that I did the first dieta. And what was your mindset or your intention when you go back to this first dieta? What was your expectations? What did you want to know? Or? Just to go deeper with the plants, just to see like this, just to see where it would take me. I didn't expect to be, if you told me 5 or 6 years ago that I'd be living down here, coming from Toronto or from Canada, and then being here, it'd be like, nope. Like that sounds insane, but yet here I am.
And when did you feel this call to not just go deeper, if not to dedicate your life to the medicine world, to become a curandero, and how a guy from Toronto feel a call to be a curandero from a tradition that is not his, but how that happened.
Well, even like right now, I'm still kind of like, was I just intellectualizing it? Was it just because I was so, I was trying to immerse myself in it fully, and I felt on some like unconscious level that was the best way to kind of go into it. Like I'm still not sure whether it's like a, like rationally, I can't really explain it. It's just like something deeper, some invisible aspect of me is just like, go. And ever since I've started doing that, I've experienced a level of not only just joy, but just like fulfillment in doing it through all of the bumps and the hills and the all the trials and tribulations that kind of come with the work as well. Yeah, but it was the second ceremony when I went down specifically to do a dieta, where I was where I was confronted with that.
And how that is?
Well, the then curandero, who was my first teacher, came and sang to me, and that's when everything kind of got revealed. Like, hey, so how do I put it into words? It was just like a feeling that you have to go do this. But I was really resistant to it because I had a whole life back home. I had a band, I had lots of friends, I had a good job, I had everything like pretty stable, and so it just seemed like a bit of a
crazy idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, throw it all away and just run off into the jungle. And in some aspects, maybe there was something I was running away from at the time while I was doing that. But what I found through doing the process more and more and engaging and seeing it more for what it really is rather than just what it is on the surface level also just made me like just confirm that I had made the right choice. And so I listened to my soul rather than my intellect, which I'm still learning how to do bit by bit every day. Because some days it's clear, and then some days it's like the ego and the intellectual mechanism sort of can cloud things. So I try to have this be the master, and then this just kind of be the servant to that.
A lot of people that are maybe listening to this, they would be very interested in how it is, this training, how you become a curandero. You know, like maybe people are not even familiar with the concept of dieta. We don't need to go too deep, but yeah, how do you become a curandero? How is that training, and what it was for you? What were some of the trials and tribulations that you had to pass? What happened after this first dieta?
Well, from my understanding, there's many different tribes who use plants in the form of curanderismo, and curandero or curanderismo is just a Spanish translation for healer, essentially. So sometimes people are curanderos, but they might not necessarily work with the plants. Maybe they work with their hands, maybe they do therapy and that kind of thing. But in the Shipibo tradition that I was trained in, they work with ayahuasca, they work with plants, and for a myriad of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual illnesses, as it were, to just bring people into like a state of remembering who they are, encountering what kind of a potential and capacity for life that they have, and just kind of bringing them into that essence of themselves so that they can be strong and powerful people in the world. Yeah. And as far as like the tribulation, so when I got the calling, there was my second teacher, who was the first guy that I drank with. I thought I should reach out to him to kind of show me the ropes and show me the way. But at the time, the guy who was leading the ceremony and gave me that ikro that kind of exposed that side, he offered to take me under his wing and teach me for a period of time. So I did a few intermittent dietas as I was gathering some funds and everything to kind of make the move permanently down to Peru.
Because at this moment you were having like a life in Canada and coming back to the jungle. You still,
Yeah, he would have groups every now and then, and he would need help with the translation and the facilitation. So I was doing what I could, working back and forth in Canada. Well, and then the first time I went down, he wanted to start a center with me. And I thought, oh my God, it seemed a little bit too good to be true. But I was so very much in a state of naivety and everything. I thought, oh my God, this is my destiny. It's all coming together. And like in some ways that was true, but it was just, it didn't happen the way that I thought it would. because a year after the center had started, there was a really bad, or the relationship that I had with my first maestro was very frictiony. Stealing money from me and not being honest about certain things that were happening, being a little bit absent to some of the requirements that some of the people came down there to heal from that I personally didn't know how to fix. That's why I was training with him, and just seeing, I before I moved down, I saw one side. I saw the one side that was very, yes, I am here to help. And then on the other side of the proverbial veil, there was another sort of side that was illuminated. Yeah. And so it was a bit of a rude awakening. But as that was happening, and we realized that we had to leave because it was just going to keep becoming like a pit of, like the foundation on which it was built, which I was not privy to prior to going down there, was one that was not aligned morally. And so it felt better to at least start fresh with a foundation that was at least based in morality. So that way there would be some stability to it. And so I contacted my second teacher, Wheeler, and explained kind of what was going on. And at that time, he was looking for a new facilitator and a translator. So we kind of worked out a deal where it's like, hey, you can come and work for me, do the facilitation and the translation duties and help with the needs of the guests. And in return, I'll oversee your dietas and I'll help you further along with your apprenticeship. And then as that process kind of concluded and I managed to be able to kind of like run the ceremonies on my own and oversee dietas, he sort of encouraged me to kind of venture out on my own. While also liking, like Wheeler and I had a very good relationship. We made a very good team. So he was a little sad to see us leave, and I was also very sad to leave, but it was just the jungle was too hot. Each summer got progressively hotter and hotter. Oh, was it this hot last year? Maybe it was. And then the next year was like, no, it was definitely not as hot as it was. So my girlfriend and I opened a center called Down to Earth. It's not really much of a center. It's more like a private clinic where people come like one-on-one, maybe maximum 2. And so we've been doing that the last couple years, and haven't looked back. It was scary to leave and kind of start out on your own, but now it was the best move we could have ever made.
What is the role of a maestro in a training?
Okay, so there's a couple of reasons for it. One, when you're doing the work with the plants, there's many worlds that one plant can have, and in speaking in Shipibo language, the plants can have this element called shitana, which can mean the negative energy of the plants that can be used for a myriad of things, sorcery or curanderismo. Shitana basically means like the magic of the plants. So one example would be in the case of mapacho or tobacco, there's a shitana element of tobacco, which is the addictive component. And the longer you do the diets with the plants, as you start to do dietas with the plants, from the way I was taught, a lot of these shitana elements sort of come out at the start. So we are encouraged to do like 3-month minimum dietas now, where of course the shitana is just part of the plant world, but you need to go longer, do longer dieta times to be able to kind of move through that aspect of it and really get to the light side of what the medicine has to offer. And it also just gives you a lot more time to kind of like bind with the spirits and to build a relationship with it, where you can see its capacity for healing both yourself and other people. And then the role of the maestro in that process is just to kind of like keep you aligned, so that if the plant is kind of trying to guide you in a direction that might not necessarily be in your best interest or the interest of other people, then they can kind of straighten you, or how they would say punta. They could punta your energetic body so that you stay aligned and true to the path.
You had moments where you feel like the plants were trying to trick you into...
Oh yes, yes. In the case of a along Bobinsana Dieta. The Shitana of Bobinsana, the way it manifested to me was sexual seduction. And whether you want to use that for good or bad, that's another aspect of the Shitana. With Shiva Wako, which is one of the primary teachers that I use in the space. His Shitana seemed to be offensive tactics. There's one ceremony where in both of my diets with him, he had offered me a sword that appeared to be, I mean, it looked really cool, and I wanted to take it because I like metal. I like, the kind of like, yeah, kind of things. But there's an inference behind there where if you take it, it's kind of like getting a hammer and then everything looks like a nail. So chances are, if you take it, it means that you're going to use it. And in addition to having like a main maestro, there was another guy named Rafa, who I'm very good friends with. He's a colleague of mine because he's studied under Wheeler as well, but he's Western. He's from the United States, and he was able to contextualize a little bit of what was going on in that visionary state. Like, hey, if you're training to be a doctor, doctors don't need swords. And kind of be able to, yeah, you know what I'm saying? It just makes a little bit more sense the way he's coming from it, because the Shipibos have their lexicon, their mythology and everything like that. But without a bridge, it can be a little bit hard to distinguish what's good and what's bad. And yeah. So having multiple inputs can sometimes be really useful while also listening to your own intuition as well.
You were sharing the other day your experience with a 5-month dieta with a very special plant called Toe.
Sí.
Can you speak a little bit about that plant and your experiences? I mean, I'm fascinated about that plant because it grows everywhere, but it's one of the most powerful and dangerous plants that you can take. Yeah? So it shows a little bit all this stupidity in the war of drugs. Yeah, they are trying to cancel ayahuasca and peyote, and Toe is everywhere in every garden.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's very interesting space that you get into that plant, and you are the first person that are able to articulate it so well. So I would love it. If you want to share a little bit.
Oh, I could talk about Toe for months and months, man. It is a plant that has so many dimensions and worlds to it. It is definitely best approached with respect. At the start of the pandemic, we got locked down in Cusco, but I was having these dreams about the plants, both like how it looks, but also what I was kind of interpreting as like the spirit of it, a very sort of trickstery sort of kind of, I'm gonna joke, but I'm gonna sort of theme in my dreams. I saw the face, I saw the plants, and I'd been doing enough diets at that point and been training enough to know that like sometimes the plants like reach out to you when they want you to contact them. And so after at that point, I think I might have had over a year of diets at that point. I'm not really sure. But once I got back to see my teacher and I explained like, hey, I think I want to do a dieta with Toe. And I remember he looked at me and then he face palmed and ran his hand down his face and went, breathed in and said, okay, yeah, you can do it. You've shown that you can hold yourself in the space and everything like that. But he says, make sure you follow the rules, because there's a saying with Toe, its Shipibo name is Kanichari, is that Toe does not forgive. So it's very important that you walk the tightrope. So when he was when he approached it that way, I was kind of like, okay. And then I started doing some, Googling, DuckDuckGo, just like Kanichari, Toe, Dieta, like what's going on here. And then to find out that like a lot of people have had really bad experiences with it. And it has, a bit of a reputation of being like a plant of, there's like a heavy amount that will be added to like ayahuasca admixtures to like make people delirious, or like it'll give them visions, but it'll make them, a little bit more susceptible to negative influence and that kind of thing if people are dosing them and they don't have their best interests at heart. There's also people who have been locked up in mental institutions, sometimes permanently, people who have done themselves and sometimes others great harm due to the deliriant quality of what it has inside of its spirit. So after saying, hey, I want to do a diet with Toe, and then seeing what what I might have been getting myself into, I was kind of like, is this, I was kind of second guessing myself at that point. But again, just like letting the heart lead, it's like, it seems like this is the best kind of thing to go through with. And despite like some of the challenges that came with it, the diet was very gentle with me. I stuck by all the rules. I, did the dieta protocols of abstaining from salt, from sex, from oil, from spicy food, from certain meats and everything like that. Still had some of the deliriant kind of qualities come in and interrupt my thought processes in a good way, in a lot of ways. But because that's how the communication sort of happens. But sometimes putting it into words is a little bit difficult.
Yeah, you were saying the other day that it's like you almost are hallucinating without knowing that you are hallucinating. You are seeing people that is not there. It's like you don't know that they're real or not.
Yeah, inside of the intoxication. The first time I took it, you don't really. Sometimes you forget that you've taken it. But some of the symptoms that I was experiencing was profoundly dry mouth. Felt like there was bugs crawling in my skin. So when I took it, and the intoxication lasts for like anywhere from 24 to 36 hours. It lasts a very long time. Wow. And having, and like the hallucinations aren't there all the time, but there's periods of lucidity. But with the dry mouth, the feeling of uncomfortability in the skin, I would want to get up and walk around, but it felt like I had drunk 20 beers or something like that. So the equilibrium was a little bit off, and then the hallucinations would kind of kick in, and it would feel like you're in. There was one time that I thought I was running through like a soccer stadium in Russia, and that I was like a Russian person, but then everything would kind of fold in on itself, and I realized that I was just sitting in my bed. And there was another occasion where I had just passed into like a dream state, and I had seen this amazing vision of like the Mai Tai drink. It was like an alcoholic beverage. There was a sky and a vista that kind of looked like the Sacred Valley, but it was full of red and yellow and pink and white and like all of this beautiful vista. And I was just like, wow, is this heaven? Did I just die? And did I just go to heaven? And so I reached out, and my hand went boom, and I sort of snapped back as the sound like went into my head. And I like looked at my hand, and I realized that I was just staring at the wall. And so I rolled back and was like, "Whoa!"
But to put some context, like this is you alone in the jungle having these visions for 5 months on a regular basis.
And another commonality between the Toei hallucinations is invisible people that come in. For example, one of the first invisible people that I encountered was an old friend from high school who I had only known, wasn't like a great friend or anything like that, but somehow this guy had come into my tambo. And he was just, at this point, apparently he was married, he had kids, he had a job.
And they are using the furniture that you have.
Yeah, and it feels just like the conversation that we're having now. And Lord knows how long these conversations go on, but it's like, oh, you're working over there now, oh, no way. And then but there's like a reciprocal dialogue with it, so he's asking me about my life. I'm like, oh, well, I chose to go to the Amazon and all of this stuff. But then a couple words come out of their mouth a little bit funny, and then you're like, huh? And then they just go silent, and then they disappear, and you just realize that you've been talking to yourself.
Wow.
And this happened multiple times, but each time that I took the Toei, there was a woman in white hair, white dress, who would come and visit me, and she would come and stick her face right close to mine, and she would either whisper or she would say something very loving and very kind. And then sometimes she would go lay down by my bed and just kind of, talk with me. I could never remember after the intoxication what she was saying. There was one time that I wanted to write it down, but I didn't really want to interfere too much with what else was going on. There was another point where I got lost in I'm in a one-room tambo. It's the room with a bed, And then there's just the bathroom, and I got lost in the bathroom, just wondering, how did I get here and how do I get out, and these kinds of things.
Did your maestro have to rescue you for some times that you were wandering around or stuff like that?
Fortunately not. There was just a point in the closing dieta, the closing of the dieta, where about for half an hour in the middle of the ceremony, I kind of lost my mind. But what had happened was I was outside of the bathroom, and I guess I was mumbling a bunch of gibberish and just kind of shaking back and forth. But in that time, what was going on inside of my head was I was getting elevated out of my body and spinning in like a DNA helix sort of formation with the spirit of Toei and of that woman who had come to visit me. And we kept spinning and going higher and higher up, and she would get closer and closer and closer. And then at one point, it just felt like she had binded herself and was making her part of my like genetic code. And at that point, it was just pure white, just nothing, as if like it wasn't full of light. It wasn't full of, or it wasn't full of. Again, it's like really difficult to describe. It was just pure awareness, pure consciousness. And then I came out of it. Wheeler was doing a really fast Ikaro while that was going on. Then when he finished, he came outside, and I'd kind of come to. And then he just shined his red flashlight on me, and he goes, "Estás bien?" And I just went, "Oh yeah." And I just walked back in the Maloka like nothing had happened.
Wow. And how it is to integrate one dieta like that, not only in your personal life, because you know that you are like playing with insanity, like how you come back to normal life, you feel that now you are like maybe more protected to these states because you've been there and kind of you were able to bring them down, but also to your work as a curandero, how you integrate, what did you take from a dieta like this for them that you can use in the space of ceremony, and then we will talk a little bit more about how is that work in the space of ceremony and stuff like that.
For sure. One of the biggest lessons that Toei seemed to teach was early on when I was taking it. There seemed to be a message coming through that this is actually what's going on in the mind of every single individual who's on the planet Earth right now. It's like we're kind of constantly tripping on our own supply. Dr. Joe Tafur I'd taken a class with Dr. Joe Tafur to just kind of further my competency in being able to help people sort of understand and navigate this realm, because he's also a bridge maker. But he also said that serotonin itself is a tryptamine. A lot of these hallucinogens like ayahuasca, DMT, mushrooms, they mimic serotonergic neurochemistry. And so when Toei told me that, it kind of made me realize that sometimes when I see people projecting things onto me that they might not necessarily be in total alignment with, or if I'm doing that to somebody else while not maybe having all the information at hand and making quick judgments here and there, but also seeing where certain people come from, different cultural backgrounds, different upbringings and different experiences that have led them to be in the same space with me. Toei actually increased my compassion quite a bit, because apparently one of the qualities that Toei can teach is like X-ray vision, being able to see through certain things. You can kind of like hear what somebody's talking about, but understand on a deeper level what it is that they're actually meaning. And they're using the language mechanism to just kind of try and circumambulate like what central point they're actually trying to get at. And so at the same time, kind of like increasing the compassion, but also really feeling into what people are saying rather than just hearing the words. Yeah. You're obviously like, you're doing both, but it just kind of helped really see where people are coming from a lot more, including like myself as well. It really helps with the self-transparency. So I try to be self-aware because I still have an ego, I still have things that I'm trying to learn. And so it's very important to me that I try and be as humble as possible in that regard, because there are times where I get a little bit of a big, like earlier on in the retreat here, people were complimenting me on this and that, but I could feel like as the compliments were coming that my head was like as big as the mountain that's behind you. So it's like, oh, okay, I got to go be by myself and just kind of like get back to like they're only seeing a certain part. Like, you know, as much as you want it to be true, like remember that, you know, you do have some, you know, do need to keep yourself in check every now and then.
Well, that's amazing. Like, you are an amazing shaman. Yeah, it's like I was very impressed with your. We had one ceremony together, and I mean, you're so young, and you have so much. I can feel your energy. Where do you come from, and that's very important. And I would love to hear a little bit more about how you start to work as a shaman. How was maybe your first time that you have to deal with somebody, or and what happens in a ceremony from the point of view of the shaman? How you experiencing it?
Yeah, well, part of the apprenticeship process, you have to. It's in the case of, if you were to compare the art of curanderismo to like a doctor who's going into the surgical room. There's a lot of learning by like observation. So when you go into the ceremony space and you're helping people with their problems, a lot of it is not really, there's not a whole lot of talking between you and your maestro, the guy who's teaching you, or the girl, whichever it is. There's just like a process of observation that takes, you know, years and years and years, but there's also like a bit of an energetic refinement process where you're observing, but you understand what's transpiring when they're doing certain things. And then as you progress with your diets, as you get in more dialogue with the natural world and what these medicines can do to help other people, the maestro's kind of his job is to kind of supervise you and to kind of be able to guide you appropriately as to like when you can maybe take somebody else's personal healing on. In the case of like doing the personal icaros towards like the ends of the ceremonies, that was after years and years of long dietas that my teacher Wheeler finally was like, okay, now you're going to help me with the people in the space. So he would go first and he would do his personal icaros for the guests, and then I would kind of follow behind him and the other curanderos who were in the space. I'd usually be the last one because it's kind of like, you know, these people have a lot more experience, a lot more knowledge. So you kind of let them do the heavy lifting, and then you kind of like pick up the traces of things that they might not necessarily have like left behind, but like on top of also being able to practice, you can kind of, what am I trying to say here? You're just trying to like follow in their footsteps so that you can get a clearer gauge on like what's happening. So, and then from the standpoint of what it looks like inside of the space, from the angle of the curandero, there are layers to the ayahuasca experience. Usually the people who are, I mean, when you take ayahuasca, sometimes you can see what's transpiring energetically inside of the room, because when you take a substance like that, it cracks your aura open. A lot of the malokas are configured in like a circle, and so when everybody's aura is cracked open, there's going to be like a shared energy in the space, which many people report feeling when they take it for the first time, and it just makes it easier to be able to see which energies are present and which ones need cleaning, which ones might need taking out, which ones just might need alignment. And it's a process by which you need to just do it over and over and over again to really get like a clearer picture of like what's going on. Also, whether there's like energetic intrusions from somebody else who might be, you know, experiencing some envy, because obviously like money's a part of this thing now, which lends itself to become corrupt like any other institution or enterprise, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is now. So it's being able to maintain an awareness of what's in the space, how to maintain it, and to be able to give the appropriate healing to the people who are there to receive what they traveled to see you for. Yeah.
And for example, if you pick up that there is some bad energies or something that you want to remove, you use your songs you have like songs for that, or how that
Yeah, there are songs that you can use either that are taught from the plants or that you can use to kind of summon the presence of the plants that you've dieted and made these relationships with. And oftentimes it's not, so like if I say like I'm doing work on somebody, it's more like I'm kind of invoking the spirit of Chihuahua or Towe or Bobinsana or Albaca or the doctorcito, the little doctors that live inside of the plants, because they do the work on the patients. So I'm just kind of like a vessel who's kind of like on standby. I'm just kind of responsible for it. It's almost like if you're if you're getting a taxi and then there's somebody who calls the taxi for you. I'm kind of the guy who like calls the taxi, you know. So the Doctorcitos are the ones who really like perform the miracles and do the healings and everything like that. And there's a little bit of interplay where, you know, you have the dialogue with the people as to like what they're actually looking for, so you can kind of voice to the Doctorcitos, this person is looking for this, so please use your medicine in this format to be able to guide this person in the direction that they need.
Can you call only the spirits or Doctorcitos of plants that you diet, or not? Or you can call...
It's a lot easier. I've tried doing it with other ones that I might have like a bit of resonance with, but if I haven't dieted them, it doesn't seem to work out as well. Yeah. So in the case of, I'm trying to think of an example where that might have happened recently. I usually just stick to the ones that I know best, because the other part of that is like, if you're just calling in like another spirit that you don't like intimately know, they might do something that that you might not be privy to, because you don't have that kind of it's kind of like bringing on like a business partner, but you don't know their background kind of deal, right? And they might have had like scam artistry in their background or something like that. So yeah.
So that's what they say, like the shaman is as good as many diets it has, no?
Yeah, and you can tell when somebody's put in a lot of dietas. You can tell it in the force of their icaros, how direct they just kind of get to the root of the matter. Like there's a big difference between somebody like me who's been doing it since 2016, 2017, and then somebody who's been doing it for like 30, 40 years. There's a big difference. So as good as some people might think I am, there's other people who could run miles of circles around me, like, and much, they could.
So there's room to learn.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about the Icaros, no? How these songs come to you? How did you feel when you sing them? I mean, how it is the experience is like? It's not something that you do consciously. It's like more like you are a channel. Sometimes I heard that, but you know, like just playing things so well, it's a privilege, because sometimes when you're trying to speak with these things with the Shipibo, they have a very interesting way of communicating with very little words, but you are able to explain this. I would love to explore this topic with you a little bit.
For sure, yeah. And yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that too. With the Shipibos, it's part of their culture. It's part of their lexicon. It's just common knowledge. They always have it. I'm just going to have a for here. They treat it like, you know, in the stories of their mythology, the Chuyachaki, Icaros, Doctorcitos of the Plantas, this is like common knowledge for all of them. As they're growing up, they learn this, and it's part of their worldview. But for us, coming from the West, those are very foreign concepts. But I'll share a little story about the first Icaro that I heard inside of a diet context. So I had also kind of heard that, okay, so you have, in order to learn the art of curanderismo, you have to do dietas with the plants under the Shipibo tradition. And so I was doing a diet with ajo sacha, a plant that smells like garlic, even though it's not related to garlic in any way, used for many things, fibromyalgia, curing addictions to alcohol and cocaine. The baths can be used to attract positive plant energy or positive energies socially inside of romantic relationships, business relationships, and that kind of thing. So I was getting my introduction to ajo sacha, and I was in the jungle and I was completely alone, and it was just a very short dieta. But there was a point of time that kind of passed where you know, I was like, okay, well, are these Icaros going to come through or not? I had done some diets previous to that, but this was my first like really profound one, because it was the first one that I actually heard an Icaro. So there was nobody else around me. And all of a sudden I start hearing this song.
And you were awake.
Yep, I was awake. I was just kind of lying in my bed, and it was during the day. And it just sounded like, but it sounded like there was a man or a woman like around my tambo hut that I was staying. So I got up and I was still hearing it, trying to look for where it was coming from. And I was just like, oh, there's nobody around here. This is, this is what they're talking about. Oh my God, this is incredible. So I just kind of fell into kind of singing along with
You,
it.
you repeat, you
Yeah.
were repeating it, like trying to
Yeah.
learn it, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes I wouldn't remember them and stuff, but when we would have the follow-up ayahuasca ceremonies to kind of like check in with the diet, I would just kind of bring the songs forth and just kind of see, the ayahuasca kind of helped visualize what the song was supposed to represent, and that kind of thing, whether it's for processing grief or loss or inspiring love or anything of that sort. Yeah, because each song kind of has like a specific intention sort of behind it.
So basically now when you do a dieta, you do it until you get the song, or you get always a song from a dieta that is a sign of a success in a way, or no, or how does it work?
Yeah, with each dieta is different. Each dieta has its own qualities. Everybody's always asking like, what's your favorite plant? What's your, which one was your most profound? It's like they all have
different tools.
They all have like their own sort of qualities and personalities and utility and everything. So it's really hard to kind of pinpoint. What was the question again?
No, I'd say like, is your objective when you do a dieta to learn the song of that plant?
Yeah, not specifically just the song, but just the medicine. But the song is the intermediary between like how the medicine is transmitted, at least in part, because sometimes you'll get like intuitions about like maybe that plant, but maybe the combination of other plants for like plasters, or how to use certain plants for like vapor baths. If somebody's, for instance, like with in the cases of brujeria or black magic, what plants you can use to be able to put into a vapor bath to kind of bring those negative energies up to the surface so they can be dealt with appropriately inside of the ayahuasca ceremonies, just as an example. Or like the plasters for pain in certain areas that might come from either energetic interference from, like a traumatic event that was emotional, or being able to distinguish whether it was like physical and that kind of thing. The plant baths are also sort of like an intuitive sort of like, okay, it feels like you need like a bath of Niue Rao and Pinon Colorado to help kind of remove some things. Or there was even after a diet, which diet was that? It was one of the long diets, and it taught me how to use the Pinon Colorado as like a shakapa to be able to, and it was kind of instructing me that, okay, so this ally, this Pinon Colorado, it has very erect leaves when you cut the branch, and but it's a useful tool for pulling out stagnant and heavy energies from people. So maybe if they're like addicted to food or drugs or something of that nature, you can use the Pinon Colorado to kind of help lift up whatever energy is propelling them to kind of like indulge in that sort of gluttony. And you can feel as you're shaking the shakapa with the Pinon Colorado, how the leaves, they start out very erect and very upright, and then it starts to become heavy, and the leaves start to droop as you continue to shake and sing and everything like that. So it's but it's a bit of a weird it's a weird way of teaching, because what it really shows you is how to focus on your own intuitive capacities to be able to help the people with certain conditions, medical or otherwise. And but it's a world that I realize that I cannot just conquer in one lifetime, because there's so many dimensions to it. So I'm forever a student.
And how important is the language in this process? Because I noticed that you sing in Shipibo, but you also mentioned the other day that it's not just about the language, it's the intention that you have behind.
Of course. What I'm going to say is just my interpretation. It doesn't mean like other people might use different ways of explaining it, but the Shipibo language for me, because of how I see it on an unconscious level, that it's a very sacred language that is almost, it's a language that came from people who lived very in touch with the natural world as a means of survival. So they have like a very intimate relationship with, in the case of, Toe means Kanichari in Shipibo, or vice versa. Kanichari is the Shipibo word for Toe. And the invocation of Kanichari rather than just Toe seems to have a little bit more of like there's a depth to
magical
it.
qualities.
And the way that I sort of conceive of I learned the Shipibo just because I was training with Shipibos. I was picking up little phrases and stuff, and was noticing that they'd be chanting certain phrases to certain people, and certain reactions would happen as a result. And so I'd pick the brains of the maestros. Hey, what does this phrase mean? or hey, what is it? And then so it's just this little process of like poking and prodding and kind of jotting down my own dictionary and my own sort of book of these phrases that seem to really resonate. And in the case of Jamakaya Ebanon is a very common phrase that's used that means now, roughly, now I am summoning the visions of the medicine. And back to whether the language is actually important. It starts with intention more than anything, because you can sing whatever words, but if you don't have that energy behind them, they're not really going to have the same effect as somebody who like really with their consciousness knows how to invoke those energies appropriately. Like I have many other gringo, quote unquote gringo curandero friends who sing in French, they sing in Spanish, they might sing in their native tongue, and they're able to achieve miraculous results all the same, but just with using a different language modality. I feel like because of how sacred I hold the Shipibo language, that's why it has that type of effect. I mean, and sometimes I sing in Spanish as well. It's mostly just because I don't know the Shipibo words, or those kinds of things to kind of compensate. But it's just a system that you become more accustomed to over time, and you just learn how to exercise your own consciousness to be able to gauge, first of all, what's going on in the space, what's going on with this person. Does this person need to purge? Does this, and just kind of gauging all of those multiple facets of what's going on inside of an ayahuasca ceremony. Because like when you're singing to somebody, it's not just you're just thinking of words to say to them. There's multiple things. You're looking both closed-eyed and open-eyed. The song is coming through. You're monitoring what the doctorcitos are doing to them, and there's also this dialogue between you and the plant spirit that's telling you which direction it needs to take next, as well as kind of like monitoring the energy body of the patient and stuff. So there's like a few different things that are happening simultaneously when that process is unfolding.
Amazing. And how is the work that you're doing down there in Tarapoto? What do you like to do there? Or how is it? How is your work these days?
Yeah, well, after we moved away from Pucallpa, my girlfriend and I opened up our own private clinic called Down to Earth, where we just take people one at a time, for two reasons. One, I don't really want to go past my, I don't really want to get a big head on my shoulders and think that I could tackle like big groups, because even like with a human individual is a very complicated and very, it is like a universe unto itself. And I've noticed that if I take on too much, then I can kind of lose where I am, where I fit into the fold at all. So just working with people one-on-one, it's a lot easier for the whole process. My anxiety levels are down. The managerial aspects of where the other person's energy is also kind of like in tandem with that, because if they're feeling something like a lot of anxiety, especially if I'm overseeing their diet, I'm going to be feeling that as well, and vice versa. So it's just like a means of being able to kind of keep the healing environment nice and calm, nice and relaxed, where they don't really have to worry about too much exogenous stimuli. And then the second reason is just that I have the capability to do it now competently. So as I said, Wheeler kind of encouraged me to, the medicine is for sharing. And if you have knowledge that can be useful to other people, it's like, we should share it, because we are all like one consciousness ultimately. And as you help other people, you're helping yourself simultaneously. Yeah.
And people can go there with you and spend, how do you have like plans of weeks, or is like depends on every individual, or how?
Yeah, we've had people stay for a week, and then some people stay for several months. Okay. So it really depends on what they're looking for. Sometimes it's because they have an illness or they have an injury, and then sometimes they're just looking for spiritual exploration and expansion, and they're looking to kind of like take their spiritual life, or just their life in general, to the next level. And the ayahuasca kind of helps them see a little bit more, and the other plants as well kind of help them see more of the depths of their soul, and which parts of their identity they'd like to catalyze next to kind of experience in this lifetime. So it's a very it's a very intriguing and fun and just just watching the process makes me feel very privileged to be in the position that I'm in, and I thank God every day that I get to be me. It's amazing.
Where people can find you if they are interested after watching this?
Yeah, so we have a website called downtoearthaya.com. There's that, and then our contact numbers are on there. But most of the time, I don't really know how people find us. It just seems to be like a word of mouth thing. We haven't even spent 1 cent on advertising. We just have the website up there for information, and contact if people need to reach out. And people have been talking about us on Reddit apparently. And then most of it is just word of mouth, and a lot of the people that we have that come for like longer stays, they've done longer dietas and everything like that. They know how the process works, and they're just looking for staying in a place that's a little bit more private and with a little bit more luxury, just so that I don't have to worry about the other energies that are abound.
It's a privilege to experience a dieta one-to-one. I think it's, in my opinion as well, at least to do a diet, I think is the way of doing it, because as you were saying, like it's a world so complex and so big. It's like just one person, and like you have somebody that is really with you during the process. It's a luxury. So I hope I can visit you someday soon. I would love to do a dieta with you. For now, we have another ceremony.
I look forward to it very much.
We have another ceremony, so we have to eat now. I appreciate your time. I think this was amazing.
Thank you very much, brother. Happy to do it.
People will have an insight of what it means to be a shaman. Yes.